Hello and assalamu alaikum to everyone from Aviation Cadet Sabersha for my channel Aviation Cadet 9936. And again, the hot topic of the day, the interim report of Flight 171 of Air India that crashed on June 12th, 2025. So today in this video, in first part, I will talk about the reactions of all those so-called experts who have decades of flying experience and have been running YouTube channels for years now, and how they were all proven wrong, and now they are reacting that how come their theories all got in vain. To start with, let's talk about Captain Steve. If you see his recent video, man, the man was angry. He was fast and furious. The way he gave out his judgments, the way he started, executing the pilots and stuff like that, I've never seen his face. I mean, I've recently seen him after this incident when he came up with his flap theory. And again, 40 years of experience, and you think that pilot accidentally raising the flaps up got the plane down? It blows my mind right away. But anyhow, he was scolded for that one, and then the Pilot Association president, Captain Sam from India, he officially lodged a complaint against him in FAA and also at the place of his work, of Captain Steve's work. So he became apologetic in the right next video. And even after that, you will see him that he was saying, oh, I'm just going to present my idea about that, and we are going to throw it in the trash can. He was that apologetic. But yesterday, boom, rebirth, resurrection of Captain Steve, because he was called American TikToker by the president of the Pilot Association and was criticized. Of course, I mean, that was not a good critique on this crash, whatever has happened. But anyhow, that's one of them. Second one is Meet Kevin, Mr. Vaporlock, I call him, and he's so furious. Why? Crap! No. His thumbnails, and he seems also pretty much angry. But he gave a clean check to Boeing in the end. He said that, see, the machine had no problems. Well, we will discuss about that in the later part of the video. So, Mr. Mentor Pilot, and I was surprised that he actually came up with he actually tried to create a doubt in people's mind that there was a third person in the cockpit.
Was there somebody else in the cockpit that we don't know about at this stage? There's lots of unanswered questions.
Yeah, but yes, but I think, right, this is my own thinking. If that was the case, the cockpit voice recording would sound different. Right? It wouldn't be. The pilot wouldn't be asking the colleague, why did you do that? Because there would be a possibility that someone else did it. It would be a different discussion. But we don't know. We'll have to wait to see, confirm that there was no one else in the cockpit. It's not mentioned, and I have a feeling that if there was another person in the cockpit, it would definitely be mentioned.
Yeah, you're right. Most likely.
Yeah, so
I was like, what the F, man? But anyhow, pass through. So now, I think I'm not proud. I have this just 150 plus hours of flying, and that also on pre-fighter jets, and that was also 30 years ago. But I'm the aviational enthusiast, a passionist. So I love aviation, and I try to stay in touch with all the things happening around the aviation. And on 19th June, I got all these theories by these all experts and debunked them one by one, and kept only one, that it could be a human error. It could be fuel switches could be cut off. So that was me back then. And 19th of June, I mean, just imagine just a week after the incident, when everyone was talking about vapor locks and flaps up and, gears down and blah, 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 blah. And I was consistent on my theory. And I always go with the Swiss cheesecake parable people are throwing away at the moment. It's not that, okay, he just wakes up in the morning and switches off the fuel supply to the engines. Everything has a series of events that lead up to eventually to the pilot in the end, and then of course he has to be blamed because he couldn't take actions. Well, yeah, that's subjective. So let's talk about the report now. Well, they have talked to, the report includes many people, apart from the aviational industry, like doctors and psychiatrists. So this is to be a gimmick, to make it more dramatic. Actually, the Indian authorities did a good job on making this whole issue very dramatic. Otherwise, they would have released the rat deployment picture on day one, but they didn't, and they sent the picture after a month, and that made these so-called aviational experts, the American TikTokers, pissed off because they came up with so many theories. Man, I used to hold my head. So anyhow, they added those ones. The first mistake in the report is, I will not talk about why they did those mistakes. That will be in the conclusion section at the end of the video. But the first mistake is the mentioning the hours of the pilot, especially the captain. And again, you see, you don't mention the names of the pilots anywhere, and you try to keep the secrecy. But deliberately, their names were put out in public. Of course, by who? By Air India. And the reason was to defame them. Eventually, in the end, you would blame them, and then the insurance company have to pay less. This accident will be called an incident, so everyone wins. No one is being blamed. Those alive ones, like Boeing or the Air India administration, they won't be blamed. Pilots dead, go bang them. So everyone's purpose is served. So his hours are mentioned. His CPL was, now this is all from my mind. I didn't take any notes today, so I'm just going to throw up the things for my 148 subscribers. And now I have consistent 17 viewers on my videos. Thank you very much for supporting me. That's all. This piece of document has to be there. That someday someone would say that, oh, this guy said that those many years ago. So, Mr. Report Maker, first of all, you should learn a bit of math and learn a bit of aviational restrictions and laws around. The command given to the captain flying, the captain, is mentioned that was on May 21st, around the dates 2021. And then the accident happened on June 12, 2025. So that's basically 4 years and around a month. So make it 4 years. And then under the command, the captain has flown 8,200 hours. Now think about that. 8,200 hours divided by 4, that makes it 2,000 hours a year, roughly. Okay, there are 365 days in a year, and you take the sick leaves out, and you take most of the weekends. They do get the weekends, although the pilots, they never have a vacation, they never have a holiday. They on even their special occasions, on Christmases, on Diwalis, on all these Eids and anything, Thanksgiving, pilots are still flying. So we should respect them for at least making people who can go to their families meet. If pilots are also on leave, then imagine that you have to travel through all, the cow wagons, and then, but yeah, there's no appreciation for their efforts, what they do. So if you take those leaves and things out, that comes down to 8 hours a day. This captain had been flying as a captain of Boeing 787-8, according to the report. I don't know. That's just the math. So he has been flying for this much time. And he has crossed the limits of human limitations of flying 8 hours a day. That's human limitations too. And he has crossed all the aviational laws. And who made him do that? Well, the question goes back to Air India again. That if this is true, then you have made that person a flying eagle. By the way, yeah, I would declare the captain as an eagle. Why? 8 hours a day. I mean, just imagine 8 hours of driving a day. how would you feel? 8 hours walking a day, how your body is going to react. And this is 8 hours of flying a day, according to the report. So either one thing is wrong. Either these figures are wrong, or the person who's making the report has problems over here. He doesn't even know basic math. One. Let's get down to the other parts. Now, once we come to the engines. Now, see, they leaked the DGCA of the Civil Aviation, the Director General of Civil Aviation. He made a public statement that the right engine of the aircraft was recently replaced and the left engine was overhauled about 2 years ago. But what does the report say? That replaced two of the engines, not overhauled. They were replaced. One was on May 1st, 2025, and the previous one, the left one, was on March 22nd, 2025. So, who is right, DGCA or the person who is making the report? So, if they were replaced, like totally brand new engines, which the impression comes, which DGCA also tried to imply that engines had no problems. Then, if you look at the data given by, again, the same report maker on top, which says that these engines have been flown for about 8,000 plus hours, and one has, I think, 15,000 plus hours. You can go back and check it up. If I do the editing, I want to keep it uncensored. I will just post it whatever it is, so you can see the background. Nothing has been changed, so I'm just going to post it like this. I don't want to go into gimmicks and wear uniforms and, get the title, and yet I come up with a conclusion of flaps can get the dual engine failure. So salute to me. No, I'm not going to do that. Probably I will do that, but let's see. So the engines were old, which asserts the theory I presented earlier that the MEL, the minimum equipment list of the aircraft, that's how it's dealt in this part of the world, that you take the engine from, if the pilot declares this engine faulty and it's still workable, engineers know. So what they do is to satisfy the pilot, not on the same day, but the minimum equipment list has some categories. So they change it with another aircraft. Bingo. Job done. And that's exactly what has happened. So these engines were faulty. We don't know the damage because the control is in the ground staff, and that is alive. And they would never take the blame on them. They would put the blame on the dead people. So that was the second mistake or contradiction or mathematical error, which should not be in a field that only works on simple math. Aviation is all about simple math, simple additions, simple deductions, multiplications, and divisions. Simple. You don't have to go calculus and differentiations and stuff like algebra. No. Simple math, basic math. And yet the report maker has grave problems in committing those ones. Now, let's get to the procedures. The aircraft asked for a full runway. The pilots asked for the full runway. Now, what does that mean? If you see the runway strip, you could see a big bump, like a booby type structure, almost after 1/4 of the runway. That is for the bigger aircraft when they want to make a turn because of their gears distance between each other. And the runway is about 47 feet wide, so they can't make a turn, so they put an extra, thing over there. So smaller aircrafts, they don't have to go all the way down to the beginning of the runway and then take off. So that's where they could take off. But the pilots requested a full runway takeoff, and that was authorized. And now, why would they ask for a full takeoff if both the engines are working and even the temperatures of 42 degrees with those conditions where they were on Ahmedabad airport? They would have used just 2,000 meters of the runway. Now, this implies that they asked for the full runway the weight category has been given 213 tons the airplane was carrying, and flaps 5, and with 54 tons of fuel on board, and 241 passengers, 242, actually 230 passengers plus 12 crew members, and with all the cargo and stuff like that, it was normal. So if both the engines had no problems, the captain would not have asked for a full runway takeoff, but he did. Now, from where did he take off? Now, that's another thing. If you see the video, the only CCTV video available, you would see the Air Indigo lining up, waiting to line up on the taxiway. So that's Air Indigo, by the way, that was bound to Bombay on that day, Bombay on that day. And after the crash, it was sent back, and 3 hours later, it flew again, which is again breaking the aviation law that a runway has to be closed for about 24 hours until the initial investigation teams arrive. At this point, they see everything, they monitor everything, but 3 hours later, everything was functional on Ahmedabad airport. So now they are, this Air Indigo, it was lined up, so the hut we have seen from where the takeoff takes place. So if you see that on the runway, you would see that that's hardly like 2,500 meters from the beginning of the runway. Now, why I'm asserting on that one, that the aircraft did not use the whole length of the runway. It used more than the normal. It did use more than normal. The takeoff run was about 58 seconds. And then the rotation was about 62 seconds. So that was a bit longer than normal. And why would that happen? Again, the problem with the engines already started. That's my theory from the beginning, and I will stick to that one. Because if two engines were perfectly well, and if the temperature conditions suit the weight category, then this aircraft should have taken off before the hot, even 50 seconds at most, that's it. Even the temperature was very high. But whatever the weight category they have given, whatever the fuel, the loading they have given, whatever the flap settings they have given, and the temperatures they have given, the aircraft should have taken off before this hut, before the taxi land, which normally they do after 50 seconds. Rotate and up in the air, but the aircraft went a bit beyond that one, so that means that there was something abnormal going on over there, in which case I totally blame the ground staff, which have given the wrong input about the weight and the load on the aircraft, the cargo section, and the engines had problems. They were not fully optimized. That's number 3. Number 4, prior to the taxi, the problem was the ground crew told the pilots about the problem on the aircraft when it came from Delhi to Ahmedabad. Like, remember the video? So there was a problem, and that troubleshooting was done. So we don't know what kind of troubleshooting they did, what problem did the aircraft had, but it did have. And of course, everyone can easily guess if the monitors are not working, if the AC is not working. So it could be APU problem. It could be because before the engine starts, all the air conditioning is through the APU, the auxiliary power unit of the aircraft. So we don't know, but we have to keep in mind that this problem was mentioned in the preliminary report, or the final report should mention what kind of troubleshooting was given to the aircraft. That's number 4. Number 5. Allegedly, once the aircraft took off, 2 of the control systems, 2 of the fuel control switches were turned off right after 4 seconds of takeoff. With the interval of 1 second. It's not within 1 second. They did it in 1 second, like 1001. No. Someone turned off the first switch and then the second one. So the interval between switching them off was 1 second. But once they relighted, you could see that there's a 4-second difference. So once they realized, 10 seconds later, they initiated on engine one. Engine one is the left engine, and then after 4 seconds they did it on the engine two, which is the right engine. So keep these numbers in mind. That it's not that within 1 second they were cut off. No, it took 2 engines to be cut off, but between the time interval between them was 1 second. But once they were relighting, they got to on position. Allegedly, that was on 4 seconds difference. So that's clear. Let's go to point number 6. Point number 6, if you see the throttle's position, which was found on the ground, was at idle aft position. Both of them, not one. Both of them were at idle aft position. But the FDR data shows they were never at the idle position. They were at full togo, like takeoff and go around configuration. So what does that mean? At least one of the things were malfunctioned. So either it was the throttle or the FADEC or the FDR, that it was still showing the FDR that it was at full power, but actually physically we could see it was at the idle aft position. Now, I saw Bronco Lario, a very respected person, because he didn't get into any of the speculations. He said that probably be on the impact it went back. But again, see, this defies the laws of physics, the law of inertia. See, once you're in a car and you're sitting in a car, no matter your seatbelt is on, and the car stops immediately, what happens? Your body still tends to go forward, right? So this airplane coming down with a speed of 160 knots, it came down, right? And by the building, it got stopped, but your body would be moving, your hand would be moving forward because your hand is still in motion, but the thing you are getting, your inside has stopped. So it would still be in front. It would not go to aft position unless the pilot did it on purpose in order to restart the engine. That's another issue. But this was a FADEC problem. This was the data being sent to the FDR problem. So keeping in mind of that, once the aircraft, that's number 7, once the aircraft was airborne, what happened? Once it was airborne, immediately both of the switches were systematically, one by one, turned down. Now, they didn't tell us that was it the engine 1 fuel supply cut off first and then the engines 2, because or probably they said, but it doesn't matter at all. Pilot flying was the first officer, the less experienced pilot, and he had the controls in his hand, because we have seen through the videos that once the pilot, the first officer is the pilot flying, the captain's hands are always on the throttle, because he's the one who has to decide if before V1 he wants to roll back the engines in, make a full stop, so that they don't continue for any reasons. It's not the first officer's choice. All the main decisions are done by the captain. And then in case of emergency, the captain takes over. But his hands would be on the throttle like this. The fuel cutoff things are over here. And once you see the runway, you can see previous takeoffs. This is a bumpy runway. Slope down. There's no way that the pilot flying, the first officer, jittering and shivering, and then he gets his hand down and switches off one by one in 1 second. Sorry, trying to imitate the same situation within 1 second. And then none of them were actually standard procedures were able to switch those things off unless the faulty FADEC or the faulty FDR somehow, when the aircraft got airborne, had the new entry, because on the ground, different entries, on the air, when it gets airborne, different things. So probably once it got airborne, it felt that fuel supply to the engine is too much, or it shouldn't be there, or for some reasons it has to be restarted. So it cut it off periodically, one by one. And a computer could do that, because these two people, pilot monitoring was the captain on the left side of the seat, and pilot flying was the first officer on the right side, whose two hands were on the yoke stick, and the pilot flying, the captain, the pilot monitoring hand was on the throttles, and the other hand, so he can't, reach up to those things which are very hard to be pulled out. So both of them would not be able to do that. But right after the rotation, the fuels were shut down, meaning that the FADEC took over and cut the supply down. And that's where, now, see, number 8, CVRs are very clear because you don't use headphones on the takeoff. So very clear about the line, which pilot is saying what. It goes directly into the data bus. So if you come up with a vague statement that one pilot said to the other, why did you cut off? And the other pilot said, oh, no, I didn't. That's criminal. Trying to put the blames on the pilots. This is criminal. You should have said clearly. Because if you tell people who did it, then you have to answer a lot of questions. But now you have thrown this bone to all these TikTokers, and they are actually chewing on it. And now they're blaming the pilots and they're talking about their mental health issue. You should be the first one who should go to see a mental, a psychiatrist. You should go and see a shrink. That you think that the flaps can get the engines, dual engine failure happen? Wow. Again, another salute to you. So now, the plane, number 8, the plane is airborne. And, see, again, the report says that once it started to lose the altitude, it was still in the airport perimeters. So now we know that dual engine has happened, according to the reports. And if dual engine has happened, the plane's gears were down, they were never raised up. Plane's flaps 5% for flap 5, they were never raised up. And even the rat was deployed, which was also, by the way, a dishonesty that they didn't put those pictures early in the beginning when they had all the information about CCTV cameras. So if these three things were down, the amount of drag they induce on this Boeing under clean configuration can go 20 to 1 ratio, but under this dirty configuration, 3.5 to 1. And this plane went 1.7 nautical miles from the airport wall. Meaning, if you add up all the distance, okay, inertia, it went up to 180 knots. Then explain, all these TikTokers and even Boeing and even Air India can explain us that how this plane miraculously went down to 1,700 meters from the airport wall. See? So this doesn't add up. The only theory that stays, again, is that the engines were faulty. At least one of them was faulty. And probably the second fuel supply line was cut off. And the faulty engine probably one of the, but that was on the ground, the supply was cut off because it never got restarted, but pilots were first to fly that aircraft. So this is my whole 2 cents on this incident, and keep that for the record, that Air India and Boeing can't run away with that one. And salute to the pilots. Allah Hafiz.